So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment.
Wait for it.
Gaming?
Wait for it.
Anime?
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is... wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wait For It podcast. I am your co-host, Phil Smith, aka Phil the Filipino, and joining me as always is your other co-host, Mr. Eric Almighty. And Eric, we are here with the August edition of the Game Room, where it happens. And I would say, typically because the game came out a month ago, this is a month in the making, but no. This is over a decade in the making when it comes to this specific series, and a series that I personally have held very near and dear to my heart. Eric, you have always been more of a Madden guy, and this has kind of really been your first full deep dive into the NCAA / college football realm of EA Sports. So I'm very interested in this conversation and to see how it will go. I also want to know if other people feel the same way that I do, and actually I do know that other people feel the same way because I've brought notes and I've brought links to reference as far as how people have felt about their experience with College Football 25. I will say this, Eric, as you have alluded to in the pre-show, for those of you that have not gotten to check that out, you can if you join our Patreon page. It's a shameless plug. But this won't be completely negative. That's not what's going to happen here, but I just have a lot of grievances to air out, and I'm interested to see what you have to say about them.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be. Not after the last two episodes where Phil's been a grouch. So he's going for the trifecta, and I think for me...
What do you mean? The first one was Top Gun.
No, the last two Game Room episodes.
Oh, Game Room, yeah. Well,
yeah. So, not great, but I will tell you, I've had a great time, so I'm going to be positive Pete over here. This game's not without its problems, but, I mean, what do you expect for a game that came out a decade after the last one? And I'm really excited to jump into the conversation and talk about it. Phil, this is a game that, when it comes out, you immediately want to give your thoughts about it, but I felt pretty confident and safe to say, no, we're going to wait at least a month before we actually talk about this game. There's so much to dive into, so much that's still left unexplored, and I'm really excited to jump into, I think for both of us, at least 100 hours of gameplay, which is something we don't get to do often, and we've got a lot to say about this, so really excited to see where this ends up. But overall, I mean, one of the biggest games of our generation for sure, in recent memory. This is for sports people, they're GTA 6, so, I mean, we got to talk about it.
Yeah, that's a pretty good comparison. So even if you yourself that's listening, if you are not a sports gamer, I highly encourage you to stick around because it will give you kind of an insight. Two different insights, obviously. One, with Eric being newer to this franchise and me being more of a legacy player who has, again, been waiting for this game since 2013. And, it'll be, like I said, incredibly interesting to hear both sides of that perspective. So, for those of you that are returning listeners, as well as our brand new listeners, thank you so much for joining us here for the monthly episode of the Game Room Where It Happens. If you want to know where you can find all the rest of our content, make sure you stick around to the end of the episode. We'll let you know where you can find everything that you need. But Eric, let's dive into this, man. Again, 10 years, 12 years, whatever it's been, and we've waited long enough to talk about this. I guess I will throw the question out here to you first before we dive into College Football 25. What was your experience with any of the NCAA football games before it did go on its decade-plus hiatus?
Yeah, very casual. Very, very casual. I remember playing NCAA 14. That's probably the one that I remember the most for obvious reasons. But no, Madden was just always my thing. Really always enjoyed that. And to be completely honest, I mean, Phil, at one point, I followed the Florida Gators very closely, but outside of that, Tebow era, I mean, college football, I've just appreciated the game, but I never really got into it the way I got into the NFL. And I think that was a big difference for me. So I never thought, oh yeah, I should probably go get the college game every single year. Also, the gameplay much different, which I'm sure we'll talk about for Madden and the difference between this game. This game is still relevant because everyone is talking about how they're going to stop playing Madden and come back to this. So very, very telling. But with that all being said, I think overall, I would say very, very limited experience, very casual experience. Again, play it with a friend, against a friend, get destroyed, and just say, all right, I'm going to go back to making a franchise.
Yeah, and if you guys want to know our thoughts on the Madden franchise, we do have a Madden episode of the Game Room where it happens, so you can find that if you want to go back to an older episode. But yeah, college football or the NCAA football games were always a great highlight because it did give you that little taste of football before Madden came out. So, it typically would come out in, again, June or July, and you would get to jump into the game right away. You could import your draft classes. You could import your my player, your career player or road to glory player. That's the word I'm looking for. So a lot of really innovative things that came out that existed in a game that again is just so beloved as far as NCAA 14 goes. I mean, people, when you talk about NCAA 14, that leads you to college football revamped, which people were lovingly modding and keeping updated all the way up until the release of college football 25. And that is something that is just wild to think about when you talk about modding of the game and people going out and spending hundreds of dollars to get a copy of the game, and then also modding their Xbox or their PlayStation 3 or whichever console it is that they use to continue playing the game. Very similar to like when you talk about NFL 2K5 as far as like a modding community. So NCAA football, I mean, this was a game that I was so obsessed with as far as just building a dynasty. I've always been a dynasty/franchise player, whether it be college football, Madden, NBA 2K, whatever those, whichever game it was. I always like building a program from the ground up. I mean, there were times, literally, the first time I got the Red Ring of Death, I was actually in an online franchise with a friend of mine, and he would bring his Xbox over, and we would swap positions so that we could play our weekly game and advance to the next week. That's how much we played this game. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, or if you need a little bit of a refresher on college football 25, this game is it was originally announced that it was returning, I believe, in 2019. I don't have it up exactly right here in front of me, but the game went away for a little bit because of NIL, essentially, and because of player likeness. And back in the day, when NCAA football was a thing, the players did not have any, like, you didn't have their names or face scans or anything like that in the game. It was called very controversial, and now, because of NIL, name, image, likeness, for college football, for college sports, these players are now able to get paid for their time, for their efforts, for their name, image, likeness, all of that. And that's why the game has now been able to return with all of these players that opt in to be in the game. They receive, I believe, a $600 compensation and a copy of the game. So they get paid from EA, and they get a copy of the game. All that is great. So that's why it went away for the longest time. And then finally, it released here, July 19th, 2024. Don't really need a synopsis for the game. It's a college football game. You play college football, you pick a team, and you play the games. And that's pretty much what you need to know when it comes to this. I will say, Eric, as far as the ramp up to this, and when it came to marketing and it came to bringing in creators that were incredibly important to the NCAA football community as far as college football revamped, they did a great job. I think they did a really solid job, and we know how poor the marketing is for Madden. So leading up to this, was it just as far as you jumping into this series that, again, you had previously never really had an interest in? Was it really just the fact that it had been gone for so long, even though you don't necessarily have a college football team, that there was just no way you could find yourself skipping even a game like this just because of the hype that you mentioned before?
Yeah, so, I mean, this is the type of game that, I mean, could be generational, right? And we'll see what future iterations do in hindsight to this game. But I think that right now, sitting in the moment, a lot of people were excited. And this is one of those games, I mentioned GTA 6 earlier. Like, you just didn't think it would happen. So I really think that for that reason, I wanted to be a part of it. But the other reason, Phil, is it's not like I don't want to play football games. I really enjoy that medium. You know, I'm a sucker for Blitz the League. There are several other football iterations that I've really enjoyed. Madden has been that bread and butter that you just always go back to in gaming when it comes to sports games. But you know it's fallen off. We acknowledge it. We played through it. I didn't want to play through it anymore. So I've had that itch to play a football game that I'm actually going to have fun in. And when I started hearing about what this game had to offer, I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about some of these modes like Dynasty, but I started to kind of see some of the gameplay, hear what it was offering, and I just thought it was really interesting. So if I was going to scratch that itch, I might as well do it now instead of getting disappointed by another Madden. And here I am. Phil, one of my biggest things about Madden is I would always wait after I got to that breaking point. I would always wait till the holidays to get it, if I got it at all. And now I'm at the point where I don't want to get it at all. So again, I've been away from it long enough where it just felt like time for me to return. And luckily, I got a fresh feel of football in the form of this game.
Yeah, and not to bring up Madden again, but because it just does not deserve any time whatsoever, especially if you're paying attention to the Madden 25 rollout. It's a disaster. And yeah, I'm finally there with you, Eric. And obviously it helps that there's an alternative football game within their own company to play. But Madden, it looks pretty much unplayable right now. The hashtag bring back NFL 2K has been trending because of Soft Drink TV, who is a very prominent Madden YouTuber who is very famous for just shitting on EA Sports, and for good reason, and also letting people know what we used to have and how good we used to have things when it comes to sports games, football specifically. So that is currently trending on social media. 2021 is actually when they announced that this game college football was returning. It was a very simple post on social media, and the world, including myself, collectively lost its shit. So let's start with the most important thing when it comes to any of these games, and one thing that Madden lacks so much is Madden gameplay is no longer fun. It's a slog, it is repetitive, and it is just an absolute chore to get through. And the college football, NCAA football game has always been faster, and they really had to nail that upon their return, and they absolutely did. I have an absolute blast, just kind of, especially when you find down the line when you're building a program and you find those players that have a lot of speed and you're able to build and craft the team the way that you want them to. The gameplay is focused, it's tight, it is really, really fun, and despite my quarrels, which we'll get to here a little bit later, it's the reason that I'm going to stick with this for a while, and as long as they don't mess it up or introduce something that they don't need to, they've pretty much got the formula down now as far as the gameplay mechanics itself, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many good things to talk about, Phil. I mean, when we kind of talk about the game in general, I think one of the biggest things is that the gameplay is so fun, and that's kind of what this eventually kind of has to boil down to, like, make a fun game. So again, that's all they really had to, that's the bare minimum we were looking for, and then you add all the other things to it. Now, that doesn't mean it goes without its problems, but sticking with the positive side, I am curious, did you still feel like Dynasty was your big go-to, or did you like any of the other modes? Because I'll be frank, I played Road to Glory, and I played Dynasty. I haven't really checked out anything else. What is your scope of how much you've been playing? Like, in the hours you've been playing, where have you been spending the most time outside of Dynasty?
It's been mostly Dynasty. That was what I played prior. I did a little bit of Road to Glory in the NCAA series, but one thing they would do, specifically in NCAA 13, the cover player was it was Robert Griffin III, and you could put Robert Griffin III on any team in the country. So even though he was in the NFL, you could place him on any team and play through his Heisman season. And that's when I played Road to Glory. I would put him like in all sorts of different teams, and you can imagine how much fun it was to play as Robert Griffin III in the NCAA football game. So that I was really hoping that would return. and they would put like, for instance, Caleb Williams in the game, or something like that, or like a recent player that we would love to like legacy player. Like, how fun would it be to play through as Trevor Lawrence? I hope they add something like that as far as legendary players to the game, similar to like what NBA 2K has. So you probably don't know this, Eric, but 2K had in their Dynasty mode, they have different eras. So there's like the Jordan era, the Kobe era, and then the current era. You can also go even way back to like the Magic Johnson, Larry Bird era, and the team, and the presentation, the filters, everything like that, is the rules. All that will adjust based on what era you're playing in, and I would really love to see that in the future, just because of the infinite well of history when it comes to college football, right? You could go back and play as Tim Tebow. Like, how awesome would that be to go back and play in those times? I think that's something they should really explore. But I've always been a Dynasty player. I've dabbled a little bit in the Road to Glory. I see a lot of the memes, of course, because of the funny situations you can find yourself in when it comes to like DMing people and all that stuff. But Dynasty has been my main source, and I'm on my second Dynasty team because of the first one was ruined by a bug, which we'll talk about. But the second team, I'm in like my 8th or 9th year of a Dynasty with Hawaii, so that's definitely been my bag.
Yeah, and I think that's important, because there's going to be a lot of things that we talk about that aren't going to be... that we're going to talk about a lot of things, but there are going to be some things that aren't touched on, like the road to the college football playoff. I haven't really touched that. Their version of Ultimate Team, like, haven't touched that. So, Dynasty and Road to Glory has been where it's really been at. A couple exhibitions, couple of practices. I know when the game first started, Phil, I was just fully trying out all the practice stuff just to kind of get my feet wet. So I want to talk to you a little bit about, being the college football guy, how the transition was getting back into this game, like getting back on the saddle. Because, Phil, we talked about it. I was having a bad time. I mean, a good bad time. Like, I was having fun, but also like 30 fumbles and 50 picks a game. Not exactly a great time, so to say. So how was that jump back into it? Was it like, riding a bike all over again, or what was it?
Yeah, so let me preface this, because we're gonna get we're gonna attract the get good crowd here, right? I have always played on all American for the most part, even dating back to NCAA. I don't play on all Madden. When I play Madden, I know what my lane is, and I know how to have fun, and I don't want to have players or the CPU being magnetized to my passes. But I will say I have been playing pretty much all on All-American. I think I played like an exhibition game on Heisman. I was like, nope, not ready for that yet. Especially in the early days of a Dynasty, when you pick a terrible team, it's almost impossible to play. So as far as picking it up, it was relatively easy. I will say, we've discussed this quite a bit, I don't necessarily play defense unless it's like a big moment. If I find myself in a close game, I will take the reins. But for the most part, through the Dynasty playthrough, I've done offense only. And it is definitely rough early on, before you have been able to find the players that you're comfortable with and really learn the ins and outs of the game. It can definitely be a little bit of a learning curve. But again, because of some of the new things they've implemented, it just feels more rewarding than Madden ever has, especially the throwing mechanic. I don't even use the new throwing mechanic that's in Madden. I automatically switch it to the old way. I never use that meter, whatever it was called, in the most recent Madden games. But this one for college football, I have kept and very much enjoy. Apparently, they're actually porting that into Madden later, which is strange. The game is out. The game's been in production for years. You could have done that. Again, this is going to be equal parts shitting on Madden and talking about college football 25. That's just how it's going to be. But yeah, it was certainly a little bit of a learning curve in the beginning. But again, once you figure out a great playbook that works for you, and also bring in those right players, it really is like riding a bike, and it's been a lot of fun. And I will say, like, good on them, because the Frostbite engine is not a good engine. Like, it's outdated. It doesn't run very well at all on Madden. It barely runs for some of their other games, like their shooters. So when it comes to like Battlefield, that's on ice right now. Who the hell knows what's happening there? So I was definitely worried when it came to, them using Frostbite, but it works pretty well. So we'll see how much longer they stick with that, because they need to rebuild the engine from the ground up or do something new pretty soon. So we'll see what happens going forward. But yeah, it was after a little bit of time. Again, it was like jumping right back in and hanging out with an old friend.
Yeah, I thought that revamp passing was definitely very good. Like, I thought revamp passing was really fun to play. I didn't know really how it worked, so I kind of had to figure that out on my own. And that's where I wish the game had an option where it would hold your hand a little bit, especially like, getting used to all the different offenses, all the different teams, all the conferences. It's not very kind to a casual college football fan. It kind of assumes a lot of what's going on, which isn't a bad thing by all means, but that was definitely my personal experience. Phil, we've also talked about this at length. I think sticking on the offensive side of the ball, we'll talk about defense when we transition to opportunities. I think that running the ball was a lot of fun, and I think it's definitely smooth. I like running between the lanes. I'm taking my time more than usual when I'm running the ball, which I really liked. I mean, how long have they been trying to perfect that in other games? So I don't want to say it's perfect, but very, very good. Although that spin move is extremely deadly, I hear, and when you use it right, it is a little broken. So there are things like that I really enjoyed. The fast-pacedness of the offense is a lot of fun, especially if you have certain teams that have been built up. We're going to talk a little bit about the modes a little bit later, I think, but Phil, I feel like kind of transitioning to the defensive side of the ball, it's hard to say you love the fast-paced offense and then criticize the defense, but that's what I'm going to do. Like, this is the first football game where I've just not wanted to touch defense at all, and I don't. I super sim and play offense only because it's nearly impossible, honestly. And especially on All-American difficulty, if you're playing like a really big team, like, you have 3 seconds to throw the ball or you're done. Like, the defense on the other side, on the CPU side, is so overpowered, but your defense is not. And I think that is a little bit of a broken scale. I'm curious what you think about that and if you ever will go back to defense. I know it's college football and that's kind of the point, but I am curious what your thoughts are on the defensive side.
Yeah, it's definitely not as fun. Now, I will say I've had some like really fun moments on the defensive end, especially in those close games. But yeah, again, early on when so for instance, I started off with Central Michigan, who is obviously a not really a very good program, and I'm going in and playing some really, really difficult teams. And even the difference between having like a 78 defense against like an 82 offense, that chasm is wide, right? Like, it's huge. So early on, especially when you're playing with a team that just does not have the roster construction, and like you mentioned, that is the point of college football. There is a lot of disparity between the best team and the worst team. That's just how it is. And so it's realistic in that sense. But yeah, early on, it's certainly not fun. I have not started a dynasty yet with Texas, which I want to do like as the season gets started after updates, and as far as like, more updates to the game, but also when it comes to overall ratings. And I probably will play defense when I have a team like that. But for a team playing early on, my other dynasty is Hawaii. Didn't really touch it. I do find myself jumping in a little bit more now in year 8 because my defense is very good and it can be a little bit more fun to rush the passer or play as a linebacker. But I'll just say this, like, I've always been, and you know this from playing me in Madden for years, like I've always had trouble reading offenses from the secondary, so I've always kind of like used the defensive lineman or the linebacker. And that's just a thing for me. Like, I know some people are so good at reading offenses and baiting people. That's just never been something that I've been able to do. There's a reason I just talk about sports, right, Eric? We don't play them. We just talk about the NFL, specifically the Jaguars. But there's a reason that, like, I just talk about them and have never really played, because some of these things that people cook up, and there's a lot of really impressive players, like, on social media, and I'm like, man, how did you manage to read that? Like, I would have been absolutely cooked. So, yeah, it doesn't really present itself to a whole lot of fun, especially if you're playing with a team that's not very good.
Yeah. And one thing I like on the opposite end is like the home field advantage. So again, heading back to the positives real quick, like I really love that element of it because it makes you memorize the play like when you're in the huddle. Like that, I think that is so unique. I don't love that you can't see the icon, but again, that also is part of it. So like again, I really just appreciated those little wrinkles that they would do. Then you have the little small stuff like when you're at the end of the game and you knee, it'll just like run out the clock, which I think is again such a nice.
Which isn't in Madden.
Which isn't in Madden.
Madden 25. It's not in Madden.
Friendly reminder, not in Madden. So I just think it's just really it's the small things that this game I think got right that add up over time, and for me outweigh the negatives. I am curious before we talk about specific stuff in Dynasty, which I think is where we're going to spend most of our time, maybe sprinkle in a little Road to Glory. I am curious, gameplay-wise, are there any negatives for you, something that you just can't get over? I think for you, a lot of it has been bugs.
Yeah, this thing is, at times, is a buggy mess, and I'll say this, it has gotten, there's been, at the time of recording, here on August 19th, there has been one major update, and then there was a smaller update, I believe, yesterday, and I haven't really been able to check it out. It was either yesterday or earlier today. I haven't been able to check it out. But the big bug that happened after the first major update, which is the one that I got a little bit of attention on social media for, is the one where when you pull up the play art using like either R2 or the right trigger, whether depending on what console you're using, the scoreboard would disappear until you snap the ball. And that's obviously pretty detrimental when it comes to just knowing down and distance, how much time you have left on the play clock. I'm kind of fortunate because when I play as Hawaii, you can see the play clock like on the stadium, like on the, so I can still see it, but it's not like that with every stadium. So that's obviously been something that's really big. I don't know what it is about football games, and I don't know if they will ever be able to get it down, but offensive line can still be a little bit of a mess. I have not seen the bug, Eric, that I showed you where the receiver will just sprint in the opposite direction in a while. Luckily, that one has gone away. There was a bug for a little bit where the player's helmet would just be a plain white or silver. It wouldn't actually show like the team logo on it. That's one that I experienced. And that's pretty much like really the biggest one that frustrated me the most was the scoreboard one. But I know a lot of people have been running into some that I haven't that I haven't seen. So I think the frustrating part is that because the game has been in development for so long, and because these are things that come up in test runs, like how did they make it to the base game? And again, we are talking about an engine that probably needs to be completely rebuilt from the ground up. So there are some things that are just going to happen. But when you have a game that's been gone for this long and been in development for this long, wouldn't that have been probably a good opportunity to rebuild that engine or use something new? And they just didn't end up doing that. So those have been the really frustrating things. But again, because the gameplay at its core is very fun, a lot of my gripes have been in lack of features that we'll talk about here in a moment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think for me, one minor gripe is that I do like the wear and tear system, but it's not very clear all the time when your player is going through something, especially in multiple body parts. So I find myself having to pause the game to kind of see who is going through it, how hurt are they. And I feel like that kind of takes away from the immersion a little bit. There should be a little bit more quick actions to be able to take. On the flip side, though, I will say, Phil, this game has absolutely made me shift pass protection. And that's not something I'm used to doing in a game based off the Mike linebacker, which, you have to identify. So again, for every like little thing, there's something like really cool and inventive or something, a quality of life feature that exists. But that's very interesting. I have not had that experience with bugs. My game pretty much has run really smooth. So I don't know. Maybe I'm lucky. It's usually me who goes through that, and you're the one who's having the clean experience. So I'm sorry this is happening to you, but I'm not going through that at all.
Yeah, one thing that would definitely help when you talk about wear and tear, I'm glad you brought that up, is especially in Dynasty, they don't have, and this is something that actually Madden does have, is there's no way to adjust your or do subs based off of formational subs. That's the word that I'm looking for. That's in Madden, and it's not in college football. And I remember going through and like looking through everything. I was like, am I just like missing it? There's no way they left this out of the game, right? But they did. So you'll find yourself, overrunning a running back or overusing a wide receiver, and then obviously your quarterback gets beat up. But like, how many colleges run multiple quarterback systems, or they have specific packages for another quarterback? Like, we talk about it all the time, how this game is almost, I won't say unplayable, but it's much more difficult if you don't have a scrambling quarterback. Well, you could, if you have formational subs, you could use a field general and then bring in that package for a scrambling quarterback like they do in college football all the time. So that's a really crazy omission to not have in a game where, again, leading up to the release, they were talking about having so many inclusions when it comes to the presentation and the gameplay of this. So the fact that that's not in Dynasty, I jumped ahead a little bit, but it still has to do with the wear and tear that you mentioned, is pretty crazy. That's a huge omission that I don't know why that's not in the game.
Yeah. The omissions are really crazy, and then the more I read about it, like, Phil, I just read that apparently in Ultimate Team, there are, like, they're not very good, but there are more tutorials, like how to read defenses and how to do certain things in the game. And, like, again, these are kind of basic things that you think the game would have, but then it does do something really cool. So, like, I'm getting a little bit more torn about it because I feel like I let this game get away with a lot because it just came back. But yeah, there are some pretty glorious omissions. And I think, Phil, when we get into Dynasty talk, I would love to talk about the ups and downs of what we're experiencing there. Because I think Dynasty is some of the most fun I've had when we talk about recruiting and all of that. But when you play it for so long, it kind of just falls under the same trope that franchise does in Madden. It's like, how long do I want to do this for? You are doing it way long than I have, because you're like 8-9 seasons in, you got multiple dynasties. I'm about to start my second dynasty, and that's because I'm 3 seasons into one, and I'm like, I think I want to do something different. So I'm very curious, like, what are the ups and downs like for you in Dynasty? Let's shift the conversation over there.
Yeah, so one thing that I definitely do that helps, and maybe this will help you as far as switching things up a bit, is like eventually, if you want to fire an offensive coordinator or if your coordinator leaves, whenever I hire a new coordinator, I adopt that coordinator's school's playbook. So it's kind of like playing through a whole new, there's so many playbooks in this that it was like playing a whole new game. And we were talking about it on Saturday, like there are playbooks out there we haven't even found. It's kind of cool that there's so many different ways to play. So that helps out a lot when it comes to freshening things up. And yeah, just to kind of take it back a little bit, like Dynasty has always been my big thing, building a program. I've got a Dynasty. I got a Dynasty from NBA 2K16, a franchise that I still go back to every once in a while. That's like 8, 9, 10 years in. And, that just because I like building a program and building up a history. So this was always something that I was going to dive into first. They got a really, really great deep dive when, again, during the ramp up. Once again, great job as far as building up the excitement for this. And, there's something just very, very rewarding about taking a team that is obviously struggling or not your typical blue blood school, which is like, the schools you always see being very successful when it comes to college football. And then going through those tough times, like I didn't win a national championship until my second dynasty, and it was like year 4 because it just took me a while to get those players. In one of my dynasties, I had a freshman quarterback that I was like super excited to play for, but you can redshirt that freshman. But still, even when you redshirt a player, they can still play in 4 games a year without losing their redshirt status. So, Eric, I had this quarterback who I knew was going to be great, had like 98 speed. I was going into the final stretch of the season, and I was probably like, I don't know, 4-5, 5-6, something like that. Well, no, that's too late in the season, but like probably 3-5, 4. I was not having a good season, but I put that quarterback in for the last 4 games of the year, and I won like the conference championship. And like that's really fun. It's like sometimes you have to in your head make up these scenarios, but I was like, man. Well, now I'm really excited to play as this quarterback full time going forward, and I won a national championship with him later. He won the Heisman Trophy, I believe. So that stuff is always really, really rewarding. So that's always been a lot of fun. So I guess what I'll ask you, what is it after 3 years in one dynasty have made you want to all of a sudden just start another one? Is it just because you're bored of the playbook, or you just want a new team? We haven't even talked about aesthetics, like the jerseys, the stadiums, the crowds. Those all feel great. You just want new jerseys because Hawaii, you know how many combinations they have? 2. They have a black jersey and a white jersey, and I'm like, you got to be shitting me. There's no way. They got to have more than that.
Yeah, so I'm playing as App State, and
that's right.
I'm having fun. I mean, I've won a national championship. It was a lot of fun to be able to put together. They're fun to play in the pistol offense, and I guess the offense could change it up. I'm pretty comfortable in the playbook. It's just, again, I'm not playing defense, and I'm not having fun with that, so I'm not playing that. So the games go by, and then the recruiting is fun, but it is the same thing every single year. So like, again, I felt like there would be maybe some more elements included into the game to make it feel a little fresh, but I mean, from season to season, it feels the same. So I really just want to try another team just to see, do I feel that way still, right? And I think I am going to feel that way because it's kind of just the UI and it's just the layout of the game and the way that they've created it. It's a good thing. It's fun, but it's like only so fun to a point. Recruiting, though, I really like a lot of the things you can do, but it's, that's the part. If I was to say I've been experiencing bugs, it's been in that space more than anything. Stuff they are working to fix, but again, it can get a little tiresome. But I'm definitely enjoying like the challenge. So it's kind of a give and take, and that's kind of why I want a fresh start. I also just went back into Road to Glory, which we'll talk about shortly, and we'll probably be limited there. But I jumped into that just to kind of mix it up. And I feel like that's what I'm missing in this game is everything after a while. All the bells and whistles kind of fall to the wayside. And when you strip it down, it really is the same old thing that you're doing over and over. And I think I'm just starting to reveal that in the game myself.
Yeah, let me touch on recruiting here first, because that's always been something that obviously a really big thing when it came to the older games and finding those gems and building them up over time, and that was always been great. One thing that's really been disappointing to me when it comes to recruiting is the transfer portal. Every single year there is a big time player that wants to the transfers. I mean, Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick, he transferred from Oklahoma to USC. Like, it happens all the time, right? And because you are always just immediately locked out from those top tier transfer players, it doesn't really feel like it's a mechanic that's very beneficial, right? Like, I'll get a couple of maybe 2 or 3 star transfers, but now that my team is pretty good, I don't really, unless they're 3 or 4 star, Eric, I don't really recruit them. I'll try and find some gems here and there, but because you're automatically locked out for their deal breaker or whatever it is, then you don't even get a shot at the top tier transfer portal players. I don't know if it's been different for you, but I don't think I've ever gotten a 4-star, even a 4-star transfer. I certainly haven't gotten a 5. So I will say, now that I've, my team has started to win. Now we're starting to get those top tier players, but yeah, it can be very repetitive, and I thought it would be a little bit more in depth than what we got.
Yeah. Are you just saying transfer portals or recruits in general? Transfer
portal specifically, as far as the first part, because I was like some guy in the transfer portal I saw on Reddit got Arch Manning. Like, that's not going to happen for me.
No, not at all. Not early on, but here's what I will tell you, Phil. Like, I don't know if you're spending all your time on the recommended page. It is misleading, because I will go look for 5 and 4-star recruits, and some will be open, and I can go for them. I'll be a long shot, but some of them will be open. So I think I have to do a little bit more manual digging, which takes more time. and then I have to kind of find out, do I want to take a shot here? But the deal breaker part, that also is a different experience, I think, depending on the coach, the location, your pipelines. There's a lot of factors, so it's not surprising that maybe you have a different experience, and that's another reason why I want to try a different team. You know, I'm the Mountaineers right now. I don't think if I pick a team in Florida, I will have the same recruiting experience per se. But again, it's one of those things that I want to try out and test out, but it's so different for everyone. That's what makes it great, but also a little frustrating because there seems to be some inconsistencies across the board.
Yeah, for sure. I think recruiting definitely needs some retooling, especially because of how important it is to your dynasty. Another bug that I will mention. So the bug that I ran into that made me stop playing my Central Michigan dynasty is that for like my 6th year, whatever year I was in, it scheduled all of my conference games for away games. And if you know anything about recruiting, that's a death wish. Like, there's no way I can host visits. I can't have, that's it. That's basically like the main thing. Like, you get a player to come in, and if anything goes well, that's basically a done deal. So that's a huge bummer. I believe they have fixed that because I haven't seen that issue with my Hawaii dynasty, but I definitely get nervous whenever a new year comes around. One thing that I have seen, now I haven't 100% gone and verified this, but I've seen enough people that I trust mention it, that say if you go into your custom schedule, right, Eric, and say like week 1 you have Georgia, like say Georgia's automatically there, you didn't do that. If you change to a different team, apparently the CPU would not schedule a new game for Georgia, so they would end up playing a less amount of games than everybody else. A lot of people have been seeing issues with conference realignment as far as not scheduling other conference opponents. That actually has happened with me. I moved Hawaii into the Big 12, and I play the same 8 conference opponents every single time, even though there's 16 teams in our conference. So there's there's nothing when it comes to that. So I hope they fix that very, very soon. Here is my biggest gripe here, Eric, with Dynasty, and again, because you didn't play Dynasty when the game was first around. One thing that obviously is the biggest interest of me when it comes to Dynasty mode is going back and looking at your success. NCAA football games had like a trophy room. You can go back and look at past records and statistics and all of that stuff. Dynasty is just essentially, the way that I've heard people describe it, and I agree, it is a play now simulator, but with a schedule. Because you're basically, like you said, repeating the same thing over and over again. If you win a national championship, you want to go back and look at that team. Nope, can't do that. Want to see the previous Heisman winners? Can't do that. Want to see statistics from a couple years ago? Nothing. So basically, when you turn the page into your new season, that's it. You can't really go back and look, unless that player is still on your team. Obviously, you can still look at their stats, but I can't look at past records. There's like a little bit of a thing when you beat a rival, it shows like the record, like I've won 24 out of however many games, but there's no record. For my Hawaii franchise, for my Hawaii dynasty, I kept losing to Boise State, and they would ruin my season over and over again. And I would like that to be acknowledged, that like I was having trouble beating Boise State, and then when I finally beat them, that was the year I went to the national championship, right? Like that stuff like that type of immersion was being alluded to in the lead up, and it's just not there. So my big gripe with Dynasty, Eric, is that it's just kind of a hollow game mode. You know, it's like you said, rinse, wash, repeat. And I can enjoy the gameplay, but also still want more from the mode itself. And I hope people understand that when it comes to these criticisms. So that's been my biggest thing, is like, I'll keep playing Dynasty and I'll continue to have fun, but once you turn that page, that's basically it. You have no recollection unless you write it down, take a screenshot, whatever you do. And I see some people have literally brought out like their laptops to like type out stuff just to have that sort of immersion and recall what happened in previous years, because without that, you just don't have it.
And when you spend this much money for a game like that, you've been waiting for so long for a game like that. That should not be the case. But yeah, I think that kind of just plays into my feelings about Dynasty. Phil, it doesn't really get much better when we get to Road to Glory. I have learned that apparently you could play high school games in Road to Glory. Very frustrating in previous versions, or the most recent version of college football. So my surprise, I want to play underdog, move into Road to Glory really quick. I pick a 2-star recruit, and I'd like to just share, because I don't think you did this. I'm assuming you didn't. I want to share my experience. So I skip ahead, and I skip ahead, and I skip ahead, and I skip ahead. And guess what? Year 1, not a single down. Not a single down of football.
What school did you pick again?
Was
it Buffalo or something?
Oh, yeah,
you ended up transferring to Buffalo, I think is what
I
it was, right?
ended up transferring to Buffalo. I can't remember the first team I was on. It was so bad. So bad. But, you get to whatever team you have to be on to kind of kick things off. And, I'm playing through the first year, 2-star recruit QB, no downs, nothing. And you'd think, why am I doing that? There must be a lot to do. Well, not really. Road to Glory, it's kind of the same rinse, wash, repeat cycle, but with different stuff. And there are things I like. Again, when we talk about it, you can do things like focus on your grades and build your leadership skills up and train. But you only have so many energy points every single week to spend. And it feels like there's no real way to massively improve for you to have a shot. I've never been redshirted. I don't even know if that's an option. So there's little things like that I'm like unsure about. And when you finally do get to play film, I don't really love the POV from a quarterback position. I'm having more fun in my second attempt, now doing a 2-star recruit, I should say now, where before it was a 1. 2-star recruit now doing running back, I think is a lot of fun because I could kind of see a pathway to playing time. I can see that there might be potential to do this. And at running back POV, it's also not as jarring. So there's a couple things like that were just really, really tough for me in Road to Glory. What has your experience been? I know you didn't play a lot, but are you seeing the same things where it's like, oh, cool, like I got an NIL deal. Oh, I skipped class. My GPA's gone. Now I can't play. Are you having that same experience?
Yeah, I also chose underdog 2-star quarterback, but I did it way later, so I actually just started it here within the last couple of days, so I did it with the benefit of knowing what you had gone through and what so many people on social media had gone through, so I knew to allocate my points correctly, although I definitely misunderstood, because my GPA was pretty high, because I was spending points on, extra credit, I still didn't put enough points into being prepared for the test, so I kept failing tests, but I was like, I'm still over a 3.0, I don't give a shit, I'm just not a good test taker, professor, I don't know what to tell you, I'm still showing up, and I'm not cheating, I'm picking all the right options when it comes to the dialogue, but yeah, I'm still in the first year, and I'm third string, so I've been trying to build up my, more skill points, but it is incredibly repetitive. Spend your skill points, go into practice, do one thing, and then rinse, wash, repeat. In terms of I do know when you do get up there, when it comes to quarterback specifically, you get a little bit more, freedom, but you still can't do audibles right out of the gate until you have the right amount of trust. And it's just a mode that's never really interested me specifically. It's been more so a mode that I enjoy watching content creators make content out of, specifically not the expert. Which is one of my favorite content creators, Eric, one of the person responsible for the Pandas being in the game for College Football 25. Really, really cool of them to do that. But that's really more so of me wanting to watch other people play Road to Glory. So it's not really my thing, and I would have much rather preferred, hey, you want to play as Caleb Williams on whatever team, that would have really, really drawn me in. So I hope we see that, like I said, in the future. But Road to Glory has never been something that was super interesting to me, and because of the grind, and luckily there's no microtransactions in it like with the NFL version. But one thing that is a bummer, because you can import your player into Madden, it doesn't how well you do in college has no effect whatsoever on the Madden. On the Madden gameplay, you have to go through the combine, and that decides your statistics, which is again another huge fumble by both companies or by both teams. But it's just something that I probably won't dabble into very much, but I'll probably jump into it maybe every once in a while to up my quarterback. But I'm a 61 overall. I'm not going to play. I think I'm at Memphis, but I haven't even gotten through my first season.
Yeah. In my journey, I now remember it with my quarterback. I was at Northwestern for 2 years.
That's right. Yeah.
Didn't play that first year, but that second year got a little bit of playing time towards the end of the season. Transferred to Buffalo, which was the Buffalo
As one
Bulls.
does.
As one does. Crazy season, and then I ended transferring one other place. Oh, Mid-Tennessee State was where I finished my college career, and then it was just done. And then it's just done. There's like no real excitement around that. You're just kind of done, and you move on to the next one. In game, you also get the chance to like ask the coach for other play calls, like 2 other play call options if you build trust. But there's like no audibling, and the calls are usually the same. So like if you don't like play A, play B and C are typically the same ones every time. So like if you don't want to run, well, B and C are runs, and they're the same types of runs that you've been running all game. So I think my biggest gripes have been Road to Glory because it's like the biggest fumble in my opinion. But there definitely have been things in each of these modes and just the gameplay in general that is not perfect. And for that reason, Phil, I really do feel like this game has so much shine on it. But as the days go by, more people are finding holes. And that's just a shame because it's starting to feel like maybe this game wasn't ready yet. Ready for greatness yet. Are you walking away feeling like that, or are you still having that positive experience where you can see yourself playing this into next year? Because for me, I'm going to definitely sink more time into it, but by the time the holidays come around, it's going to be much more casual. I could foresee that. And that's not exactly a bad thing for a casual gamer like myself in this genre, but where are you going to be by the end of the year? Are you still thinking you're going to be pouring hours into this every single day or every single week?
Yeah, I think I will, because one thing when it comes to, especially when the college football season comes around, this is what happens for me in NBA 2K, is I will see a player doing very well and be like, oh, I'd like to play with that player. And now in college football, because of NIL, I can do that in the game. So I'll find a team like, some random team will have a really great season, like UCF. I believe has like a really interesting quarterback that I think might be very good this year, and I'll probably jump into a UCF franchise dynasty. I keep saying franchise dynasty, but I'll jump into UCF and use that player and then build that program up. So me, that is a thing that I will sink hours and hours into. Like I don't even know how many hundreds of hours I have in NBA 2K23 because I didn't like 2K24. Like I will stick with a game when it comes to the gameplay that works for me. That's why I play 2K16 for so long, because I liked the gameplay and I didn't like the changes that happened between then and now. So I can see myself playing this for a while. I mean, for me, even for Madden, that I don't like, and have not enjoyed Madden in a long time, I'll still play Madden well into February or March, which is a detriment to me. But I just like to sit down and play a sports game and turn on a podcast, and that'll be like my quiet time. Like I don't always want to play a competitive shooter or whatever it may be. Sometimes you just want to jump into, your franchise, your dynasty, whatever it is, and play that for a while. So yeah, I do think I'll probably be playing this for a good moment. Another thing, Eric, I brought this up, this point here on Reddit is because what's really frustrating, because there are so many different faces when it comes to like the players in the game and even the coaches, but there's 2 options. There's polo and jacket, and they don't even have the logo of the team on the polo or the jacket. It's just such a small oversight because, again, like you said, there's immersion stuff in here. That's great. It's really fantastic. But, like, that's it. No hoodie. I don't even wear a headset, I don't think. And there's not a jacket. Like, why where are all these other customization options? We didn't even touch on how you can't change numbers for your players yet. Hopefully they patch that in very soon. The fact that it wasn't in the first patch when it was like the most requested thing from players is insane. So the fact that EA is still at the helm of this is really what is shining through. So it's like you said, it's very surface level, and at the end of the day, you're still reminded, hey, EA is still in control of this, and this is what you're gonna get.
Yeah, and I am worried about what future iterations are going to be, because I don't know, they're going to do the right things now, but like 3, 4, 5 years from now, who knows what that's going to look like, assuming they still retain all the licenses to everything. But Phil, you mentioned listening to a podcast as you play like a sports game. This game, I've had to play a lot of music because the music in this game is terrible. There is none. It's the same drum line. It's the same drum line.
No licensed music.
No different at all. During the game, also, like, it's just crowd noise. Like, there's no real interaction. Like, there's no, like, engaging stuff going on. The commentary, in one ear, out the other. I don't know how you feel about that. I feel like the commentary is just all right. Like, it's passable. And I feel like this game has like 3 elements to it. This game has really excellent stuff going on. This game has very passable stuff, which is like a lot of it. And then there are things that just are egregious misses. And I feel like for a game like that, for me to have sunk this many hours into it, I feel like I hope this game would be better than it is. And I just continue to believe into that. Like, yeah, no, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. But I am wondering when that's going to actually happen and if I'll still be playing this game as much as I am now when that happens.
Yeah, and that's another thing they put a lot of emphasis on when it came to the play-by-play and the commentary. Yeah, I don't listen to that. It's repetitive as per usual. And credit to Reese Davis, who has said he wants to get into the booth and re-record some lines with a little bit more excitement. But ultimately, like, when is that going to happen? Is it going to happen? Are they going to really spend the time and money to do so? I don't even know. One other thing, as far as like gameplay, Eric, I don't know if this has happened to you. If I am punting the ball away, I would say 40% of the time I can get a roughing the kicker or running into the kicker call. Is that happening with you?
No, when you're punting the ball away, no.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not
It
getting
happens
that
all
lucky.
the time. Oh, it happens to me all the time, where I can almost depend on getting that penalty to keep my drive going. One time, I have it recorded, I got 3 roughing the kicker calls on a field goal kick. I missed all 3. That's not the point. But
let's not even talk about the kicking mechanic, because like it's accurate to college football, but that kicking
I enjoy it.
mechanic, yeah, you gotta get used to it for sure. But you just mentioned another thing, Phil. Like, the more we talk, and I think that's why this is one of our longer game room episodes, is because we just keep finding more things. This game, Phil, unless I'm supposed to change settings and I didn't know, this game, there's no penalties in my game. Like,
No, I barely ever get penalties. I'll get like a holding every once in a while. I don't even really get injuries.
There are some egregious pass interferences that are just not called. And I don't know if that's just the college game. I don't think it is. So yeah, the penalties is such an issue on both sides of the ball, for sure. That's another thing that's really kind of irked me. Because again, you'll see a defender dragging all over a receiver and miss that pass. And just nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, there's never any DPI, OPI. I very seldomly get a holding. The only thing, like I said, that I'll see consistently is running into the kicker. I don't know how people are returning kickoffs so often as well. That's never happened for me. But yeah, like you said, I don't know if it's something as far as the game tuning, but yeah, I don't ever see any of those. I don't really ever see any injuries for the most part, other than when I overrun my quarterback. But when it comes to, like, when it gets close, I just, take them out and put somebody else in. But again, formational subs would be fantastic. But yeah, I think if we continue to talk about this, there'll be more and more things that pop up, and all you have to do is kind of go through the subreddit. And I know a lot of people, as far as, when it comes to communities, a Reddit community can be a little toxic, but this is a community that, again, has been playing the game for 20 years, and a lot of excitement when it came to the re-release of the game. And like you said, Eric, there's just a lot of concern for what the future of this game holds, and hopefully we don't see a lot of those negatives from Madden creep into college football. I really hope that's not the case, but yeah, because the game is so incredibly surface level, it just leaves me disappointed is too strong of a word, because I am still enjoying it. I've got like 130 hours in the game. But like I just expected it to be better, especially because of how much time they had, and also because of the people they had involved. Like they brought people in from College Football Advanced to work on this game. They worked with the community to improve, to make this game, and it still ended up being what it is. That just leaves it being incredibly concerning.
Yeah, I agree. The fact that the more we talk about this, the longer the list will go of things that we're concerned about or we're a little disappointed about. But again, I want to stress, this is a game we've both sunk in over 100 hours of playing time for, and this game is very new. So they're doing something right, but definitely remains to be seen what the future holds. Phil, I think that's a great place to kind of put it. From what I'm understanding, I believe that this game is selling well. I would assume that that's the case. I didn't really pay too much attention, but I'm pretty sure it's well over several million copies. So again, this game seems to be sticking around. Seems like they've got it for the long haul. Will we do another one of these episodes about this game? Probably not, but I think that, again, this is something that you just kind of have to try out, even if you're a casual fan or a casual sports fan. If you've ever enjoyed a football game, I would definitely say at some point pick this up. Definitely around the holidays is going to be perfect if you're not into it. Phil, some people are buying consoles just to play this game. So again, really speaks to what we're dealing with from a level from the community. And again, just really glad that we got a chance to get a lot of time with it before we did this episode.
Yeah, as of July 31st, a few weeks ago, Sports Illustrated was reporting that it had cleared $500 million in sales, and that's only going to go up, like you said, with the holidays. As far as Metacritic scores, it has an 84 Metacritic, but a 5.6 user score. So I think that's pretty... Now, that's only based on 202... Oh, this is for the PS5, so I'm sure for the game overall... I'd like to see what it looks like. Oh, here we go. Yeah, 5.6 for... Yeah, that's for all consoles. So that's pretty representative of, what we've been seeing as far as on social media when it comes to the response to the game, because the honeymoon period is over. I need them, we need them to fix some of these issues that, again, shouldn't have popped up or even gotten into the game. So we'll see what the future holds. And we will hold our collective breath that EA does not EA this thing. But, folks, thank you so much for those of you that stuck around for this episode. Obviously, it was a topic we were very passionate about. And, while there were so many positive things, there were also a lot of opportunities, is what I'll say. Because, yes, some of them are negatives, but, the groundwork is here. If they do the right thing, which we cannot depend on EA to do, but... if they somehow find themselves in a position to improve this the way that they need to, we could be looking at something that easily outsells Madden each and every single year, and then hopefully we get, we end up getting competitors for Madden and other football games altogether. But, folks, thank you so much for checking out this episode, this month's episode of The Game Room Where It Happens. If you want to find other iterations of this series or anything else that we post, make sure you check out our Linktree link in the show notes of this episode. You'll find all of our other episodes, as well as our social media pages, the most important ones to keep up with being Instagram, TikTok, Discord, as well as our Twitch page, where we stream typically every Thursday night. You can also support the show by going over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leaving those 5-star reviews. Those are incredibly beneficial to the life cycle and the health of a podcast. It shoots us up the charts and gets more eyes and ears on the show. You can also head on over to YouTube, turn on alerts, subscribe, leave those likes, comment. All of that stuff is very, very helpful. But if you find yourself wanting some additional perks when it comes to the podcast, maybe some behind the scenes stuff, Eric will let you know how you can do all of that.
Yeah, so a couple free ways that you could support the podcast have been mentioned, but if you want to take your financials and send them over to us to give us a little support there, that'd be great. You can always do that through our Buzzsprout page, or you could take those funds and move them over to Patreon, where patrons like Stefan, Breyer, Corey, and T3 Cato are helping us out over there, and in exchange, getting early access and behind the scenes exclusive looks behind these episodes like this one. So we would really appreciate continuing to grow that community. A lot of cool stuff, multiple different tiers, and even a free tier. If you just want to check out what's over there, a couple of free clips, definitely would love to have you over there. With that being said, there are all the free ways that you can support, and we appreciate those too, from our Discord page to our social medias, and just listening to the episode. We really, really appreciate all of that and more. With that being said, my name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino. And please don't forget...
Look, this is empty like Dynasty.
We release new episodes every Wednesday with bonus content on TikTok and Twitch. And all you gotta do is wait for it.
So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment.
Wait for it.
Gaming?
Wait for it.
Anime?
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is... wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.